All right, next up, we're going to talk about comments made by Will.i.am. So, Will.i.am, pretty big in the music industry, big in front of, as an artist as well as behind the scenes. He's produced a lot of music. He's a big time producer as well as being an artist in the Black Eyed Peas. He recently talked about why he wasn't a fan of the music of Tupac and Biggie. So he was recently on the Hip Hop Confessions show, and he was basically talking about why, for him, it really wasn't about Tupac and Biggie. He was not the biggest fans of their music. So we'll play that and then we'll talk about it.
That's my goal. If I had a top five, Rakim is one.
And because and Tupac's dope. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I don't think he's dope. It's just the music
didn't speak
coming from. It spoke to the projects. My escape is De La Tribe out the projects. It took me out of the projects while I was still in the projects.
Mine too.
Right. Not only did it take me out of the projects, but it took me out of the projects physically, as far as like being able to like reach my dreams. That was my path out.
Right.
And it took me out of the projects as far as while I was in the projects, the worlds it painted for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept me safe while I was in the projects. Had I loved Tupac and Biggie while I was in the projects, I probably would have been stuck in the projects still.
Mm-hmm. So I felt like that last part was worth discussing, in particular, where he said he feels as though if he had been listening to Tupac and Biggie while being in the projects, that there's a chance that he wouldn't have left the projects. So, obviously, several different angles we can go there. That might rub a lot of Tupac and Biggie worshipers the wrong way. I don't think it should. I think it's just an opinion you don't agree with. But nevertheless, people might find that egregious because, those two guys, in terms of the annals of hip hop, are held in very, very high esteem. A lot of people, in most people's top five all time, that completely subjective, ridiculous conversation that we like to have, those two are in most people's top five ever, all time. So, Will.i.am talking about how he wasn't really on the Tupac Biggie vibe, it's going to stir up some conversation and rub some people the wrong way. But, what was your first thought with that?
My first thought was, I can see that. It's Will.i.am.
Yeah.
Second thought was, let me see where he goes with this. Third thought was, I agree with everything he said. And the reason being is, this was a time when I was at FAMU and I was being like a mentor or something like that to like the freshmen that were there. And we were having like every week we would have like meetings, group discussions or what have you. And we were talking about Tupac and how real he was and how much he provided for the culture and all that good jazz. And there was a point where, somebody had brought up the music that he made, talking about, I get around and this and that, and, using the B word to describe women and stuff like that. And we were having a real deep conversation. And then we brought up Tupac, and then somebody brought up that angle. And it was a kid, and then he was like, why do we hold that to a high esteem? Like, why are we praising and worshiping somebody that was calling women bitches? Yeah, he had songs where, he would clean that up. But as far as an overall artist, he wasn't a perfect person. He was still young and he was finding himself, and he released music that was hurtful to our people. And so why as us in this room as intellectuals still worshiping this guy? And as a young person too, I was like, oh wow, it's pretty deep, kid. I didn't think of it that way. But ever since then, I've carried that line of thought of whenever we do talk about, the Biggies and the whatevers. And the reason why I always sided with Tupac was because of the songs that he did actually, provide substance to. And a lot of those songs resonated with me. And I wouldn't listen to the ones where they were commercial. But still, I get where Will.i.am is coming from, because Tupac intentionally was targeting a specific type of demographic with his music. Even when he was actually coming out with his conscious stuff, it was still an energy behind it that was coming from a place that Will.i.am didn't want to associate with, and I can completely respect that. And it was an angle that I wasn't coming from. But when I was listening to it, I could feel it and be within that. But what am I doing and what am I signing up for whenever I get into that vibration? Instead of talking about it in a more holistic light, in a more light where it was more communal and less, I'm the man, you ain't, this and this and that, or what have you. That ego braggadocious type of rap where, it's more open-minded. Like how he says, very valuable what he says, hey man, they took me out of the projects before I even got out of the projects. And so, and from a person like myself who didn't grow up in the projects or whatever, I understand what he's coming from, in the sense of when I listen to certain type of music, from these artists that I'm being told that, hey man, this is the Hot Boys, you got to listen to this. Or, hey, this is that, you got to listen to this. This is DMX, you got to listen to this. And while I'm sitting in comfort and safety, bullets are flying in my living room because I'm listening to these guys talking about bullets flying in their living room and how they got to get the next jug and how they got to do this and do that. And now my mind is in the trenches, and I've never been there. So long story short, Will.i.am is basically getting to the point to where we talk about on numerous occasions in here of how music can sway somebody's reality. And so he doesn't subscribe to just, hey, Pepsi or Coke. Well, why do I have to drink soda? I'd rather drink 100% juice. Why you keep limiting it to these choices? So I agree with everything he had to say. And I think more people need to speak up on this, because why is it just Pepsi or Coke? There's plenty of options out there, plenty of great lyricists and plenty of great guys who contributed to the culture outside of these two individuals. So what do you say?
Yeah, I hear you. And why not 100% juice? Also, why not different forms of TV shows and movies too, right? Why not different, options for, streaming and whatnot? It kind of all goes hand in hand. So this conversation informs me on the difference between music and other forms of entertainment, especially when we're talking about music that speaks directly to the Black population. So a lot of people like to, whenever the content of music is being defended, one of the things that you'll always hear from people who err on the side of the music is, well, what about these movies? Why are we, if the music is so influential, why is it that we can make all of these movies and no one is attacking the movies or the directors or the actors? Why are we always attacking rappers? People really do love to jump to the defense of these, hip hop artists and these rappers and stuff. And the difference is, the reason why music resonates and movies don't is because there is a discernible difference in terms of the fact that things like shows and movies are fictional portrayals. There are characters involved in those that are more easily identifiable. So in a movie, it's going to be, Morgan Freeman plays such and such, or Denzel Washington plays such and such, or whomever, Anthony Anderson, whatever actor you want to think of. Kevin Hart is playing this character, but there is an intrinsic understanding that that is a fictional portrayal of something. It's not a real thing taking place.
Right.
Whereas when it comes to the music, Tupac is playing Tupac. Biggie is playing Biggie. They are, for all intents and purposes, playing themselves. And so the air of realism allows for people to subconsciously glean the content as reality and not as fiction. That's what makes it different. So movies and shows are fiction, whereas music, for a lot of people who consume the content, is reality. And where an individual like Will.i.am was able to benefit was his consumption of music was, from what I can tell based upon these talking points, very much the same thing as his consumption of other forms of entertainment, which is I consume this content as a form of escapism. So I listen to music for the purposes of taking me away from here mentally, not helping me cope with my circumstance. And I think a lot of us as Black people especially listen to this music because we believe that it allows us to cope with our circumstance, and not only cope with it, but allows us to ingratiate ourselves further with it and lean into it from the standpoint of emulating behavior, because if they're doing it, then it gives me sort of it gives me a de facto compliance to also do it myself. And Will.i.am doesn't ascribe to that. He, throughout his youth, listened to music in the same way that he probably watched movies or TV shows. You know, he was probably a guy who was into comic books and other forms of media as well. And those are things that people consume as a form of escape, not as a form of relishing in the reality, or rather languishing in the reality that I'm in. And so, you know, I relate to that. And I respect him for it. And what I don't want to see is people disrespecting his point of view because they feel as though it's not authentic to the true Black experience. Because as we've talked about on several occasions, what does that even mean? You know, why does it have to be Pepsi or Coke? Why can't it be juice, as you articulated? I think that's 100% valid. You know, I applaud him for being able to say that, because a lot of people in his position would probably bend the knee, and even though they didn't mean to, talk about how Biggie and Tupac meant all the world to them. And, you know, I'm glad that he was someone who didn't feel bullied by the social climate, especially in the industry that he's in, and the way that he's made a living, that he didn't feel bullied to express those sentiments, but rather felt comfortable speaking honestly and earnestly, because there are more than one ways to skin a cat. And for the record, I think more of us should be consuming this music stuff as a form of escape, entertainment. Like, you should listen to these artists, these rappers. You should be listening to them the same way that you go to the movie theater to watch some movie, which is, it ain't real. It's entertainment. Filter through it things that can be applicable to your life in a positive way, and get rid of all the stuff that can sort of cause you to be influenced, you know, by negative propaganda. But not enough of us do that. There's a deeper reason for that, obviously. There's various other socioeconomic factors that go into why so many of us consume the content in that way. But, you know, I said kudos to him for expressing that, because as an intellectual, it would make sense that he would consume the music in that way, even if he is talking about artists as influential and big as Pac and Big.
Yeah, and honestly, when him saying that stuff, it explained why he made the music that he did make, because he made stuff that people classify as pop music, but now that I think about it, after watching what he had to say, all his stuff was, in air quotes, feel good music. So nothing in there, anything that came from him was always up spirited, upbeat, and trying to get people in a good mood. So I can see why he makes music like that, because of how he feels what music should do for people, and he understands the power of music and the vibrations that it can put someone in. Me personally, I like to listen to what people call trap music and stuff like that, is because I found it interesting how someone can articulate their life so detailed, where I can listen to whatever they're going through and I can go, you know what? That explains a lot. Also, I see stuff kind of like that go on around me. I never could explain what that was, but hearing it from like this in this song, that actually kind of make sense. And then I would also hear from people who actually live that life a lot more closer to that lifestyle than me. they would vouch for certain artists, and then I would listen to those artists and I would hear how detailed they were just explaining what's going on. And one of my favorites was Bankroll. I love Bankroll Fresh. But at the same time, he was so good at the details. I was like, bro, we don't need you rapping about this. We need you rapping about something else, because the way that he could, I mean, everything that he would just put into a song. I mean, I'm literally right there with him. And while I was a fan of what he was doing, I was also afraid of what he was doing, because I know that somebody that actually has access to that lifestyle is listening to him and being further influenced.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a wild thing whenever I run across somebody who is so gifted at coming up with this music that's actually more detrimental for our people than it is positive. And so, unfortunately, Bankroll passed, but it's still a thing where, just listening to him and his abilities, I get lost in the art of it. And then while listening to the art of it, certain things I'm furnishing my room with trap rap. So everything that I see is from the music I hear. And I don't have to bust a jug. I don't have to do that. But now that's in my reality. So when somebody tries to finesse me, it's something that it's a vibration that I put myself into. And so if we choose to listen to more high frequency music, then at that point we will have a more high frequency existence and a more high frequency, exchange in life, versus having these low vibrational, I'm just talking about my circumstances. I'm just talking about my circumstances. And this is like, hey, if you just keep talking about your circumstances, then you're gonna stay in those circumstances. So just like how he said, if the music is made for that type of energy, like the projects or whatever, then I'm going to stay in the projects.
Yeah.
So we have to listen to something that motivates, that pushes ahead. It's kind of one of those things where if you're not moving forward, you're automatically moving backwards. So if you're articulating your current circumstances, you're naturally moving backwards as a people. So in order to make more high frequency music, if you do decide to talk about your current circumstances, you have to talk about them in a way where it elevates and you uplift out of it, where you're not just always talking about, yeah, this is what's going on next to me, this is what's going on next to me. Because actually you're just ensuring another generation of confusion and the same perpetual cycles of mass incarceration, unnecessary death in the streets, kids joining gangs, and all this other madness that's going on. So I agree with Will.i.am. I don't know if I'm going to listen to a Will.i.am song after this still, but I am more of a fan of him as a person, because I think it takes a brave person to come out his mouth like that on a hip hop platform to say that about the pantheon of rap gods. So
Literally, yeah, literal rap gods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just I agree that I felt as though I think it's a good point when you say that he made music. The way that he made music was in the same way that he approached the act of listening to music, which is uplifting, a form of escape, something that's going to help you feel better about your situation, as opposed to something that's going to cause you to languish in it. I just think that there's a delicate balance. And, some of the older generations of artists struck this balance more effectively than, in my opinion, current artists do, which is why sometimes I speculate that we've gone backwards with a lot of this stuff. I feel like artists who were active when we were coming up, they made music, but they also evolved as human beings as they evolved in their careers, to the point in which every project that they made didn't sound exactly like the previous one that they made. Mm-hmm. And, if you're 10 years in and you're living an opulent lifestyle, you shouldn't be talking about murder, death, kill all the time anymore. So even if that was once your reality, you don't not making music like that doesn't necessarily mean that you are now no longer authentic. It just means that there is a natural progression that all human beings experience. And we should all embrace the idea of that. And so the more people who have access directly to that lifestyle, as you put it, can observe a particular artist evolving, then I think the greater the likelihood that they themselves will embrace the idea of evolving.
I think, and I hear that. I think so Jeezy, for instance, so Jeezy tried to do this. So Jeezy tried to make. It's not. I can't help that he's not good at it. Whoops, sorry. But he tried to make music outside of him talking about bricks, and he was trying to. He was actually trying to, and it didn't work.
Well, he just wasn't good enough.
That's what I'm saying.
He just wasn't good enough.
I mean,
but Jeezy just wasn't good enough to make the transition.
That's fair. But he tried. He went right back to it. But that's fair.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. I just don't think that he had the talent to be able to make the transition successfully.
I agree.
But for every one Jeezy, you have another Jay-Z or Nas. And they were able to do it successfully. And I know I'm dating myself, but that's the point that I'm making, is that I think you see that more readily in previous generations of artists, as opposed to artists these days who they are a flash in the pan and they hit their lick. And obviously they are, number one, they're unwilling to transition. They don't want to. And number two, and because they don't want to transition, they don't have the capacity to learn how to transition. And so once they hit their lick and they're hot for a few years, they've disappeared and they're no longer relevant on the music scene. So, at least Jeezy was able to sustain what he did over the course of several years and several albums before it finally came to a head for him. But nowadays, a lot of guys can't even do that. And by album number 2 or 3, it's already a wrap for them. They're already done. I don't even know, like, where is OJ the Juice Man and Fetty Wap right now? And they were doing their thing for a good little minute here or there, for maybe a year or two. Ain't heard from them since. And that's because they just, I don't know what it is, but I feel like, newer generations just simply lack the capacity to make that transition. And it's because they're unwilling to do so, first and foremost. And because you don't want to do it, obviously you're not going to take the time to learn how to do it. But, the blueprint is out, and other guys have figured out how to do it. There's a way, and it's helpful. And I think Will.i.am speaks to that. And so I think for every Jeezy, there's another. Like I said, I mentioned Jay-Z and Nas. Fabulous, he's an older guy, and he's still great at what he does. In my opinion, lyrically at least, Fabulous is still somebody who will probably eat almost any rapper today, not named Jay-Z, Nas, or somebody else you want to throw in there who's really good, like Kendrick or Pusha T or somebody like that, J. Cole. And he's not doing the I'm in the streets smashing all these girls and selling all these bricks music the way he was when he put out his first album in 2001. So, like, there's ways to go about doing it. I just think that the general acumen of today's artists is significantly less than what it used to be, which is why we see less of it and why we have so many people in our communities languishing in these realities, because they don't really have any alternatives to look to, because it's a formula that's being repeated. And, there aren't enough Will.i.ams who are sitting in the neighborhood saying, I listen to my music for escape, not for a confirmation of my reality.
That's very fair. And real quick, I'll just say that when it comes to flow, cadence, ability to just captivate you with the punchline, the setup, the everything, Biggie wins that hands down.
Sure.
Hands down. Unparalleled. I mean, it was one I ran across a freestyle probably about a couple months ago, and it sounded like it was recorded last week, of how his timing was. And the shit was made in like 92. It was like just ridiculous. Yeah. So Biggie, I always gave that to him, still will. Just nobody can top that. Now, when it comes to substance, ability to convey heartfelt realities, Tupac, hands down. Again, it's another hands. I get why it's the Pepsi Coke debate, and honestly, whoever decides to lean on whatever side, I know why they picked that. But to me, as artists, I do put them high up on my list. It might be mind control, but I put them high on my list. They're not on my favorites list. My favorites list is not who I think is the most skilled. You know what I'm saying? So that's a difference.
Yeah,
but my favorite list doesn't even have them in my 5.
Yeah,
because it's not my favorite. I don't listen to them all day long.
Right.
But as far as their skills, as far as and the time in which they were doing it, and that's the other part too. It was kind of like, hey man, I was there when Wilt was dropping 50, 60 a night. So I can remember that and I can see that. And it's like, hey, I remember how that was and shit was amazing. So I still put them up high on my list, but they're not on my favorites list. They're just not. I have some real reserved people that are more substance based than the both of them. So
yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, that's perfectly fair. I'm inclined to agree with all of that. I wasn't really a big and look, man, like Tupac. Okay, so Tupac died in '96. I was like 9 when Tupac died. Realistically, Tupac is before my time. Both of them. They're in the previous generation. Same thing with Biggie. Biggie died January 1997, something like that. So like I was like 9 and 10 years old when those guys were killed. That's really before my time. All I could do was look at what they did in retrospect. But yeah, I think that's fair. Listening to the way Biggie used to rap, I kind of feel like Biggie was a prodigy in terms of ability. I think that had he had a full career, he only made 2 albums. And in the 2 albums he made, he has bars that still can't be touched by anybody. So I just think that he was a prodigy from an ability standpoint. And Tupac was more of a galvanizer. Tupac was more of a get behind my message. Yeah, I'm going to spur you into action type thing, which, it depends on what you listen to music for, which is going to determine who you put higher over the other. But yeah, I agree. I don't put either of them, me personally. Neither one of them is like up there for me. But, when you say what you say, the reason why you're able to say that is because you have the filter, which allows you to listen to this music without being conditioned to believe that you have an obligation to emulate the behavior of the music. And so you're able to say, I listen to, Trap this or Bankroll Fresh that, and yet here you stand speaking on it the way that you do. Most of us do not have that filter. And I think that the presence of individuals talking like Will.i.am gives somebody the opportunity to develop their own filter, I think. And so that's why I think that there's value in somebody like him speaking the way that he speaks. And so I appreciate that. But enough of that grandstanding, all of that righteous indignation. That's going to do it for our video for this week, man. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you are watching this video on the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button so that you can get the notification for all new content posted to the channel. Please hit this like button on this video because it is free. Again, all relevant links to all references made, as well as to content that we do not put directly in the video, whether it's other clips or other data and facts, data, statistics, stuff like that. I will include that in the description of this video so that you can reference those upon further viewing. You can follow me on Instagram at JVWins, JVWINS. And you can also follow the Conscious Approach page on Instagram at ConApproach, CONAPPROACH. For the time being, if you are watching this on Facebook, hit the like button, hit share button, and definitely like the page. I certainly appreciate it. I am still giving consideration to shutting down Facebook because Meta is actively engaging in content censorship. So just, be aware of that because it's a very real possibility. I am not a fan of what they are doing. But until next time, I certainly appreciate you supporting logical content.
Yes, sir. And the name is Dogon SS. You can find me on Instagram at Dogon_SS or on YouTube at Dogon SS or any other social media platform as Dogon SS or Dogon_SS. All right. So like, subscribe, make sure you do that. And like my dog JV Wynn says, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel, man.
Yeah.
You know, all right. Like these videos, man, because we be going in. All right. But as I always say, man, keep it calm, keep it chill, keep it player. Don't be too high, don't be too low, man. Stay neutral, bro. Don't let nobody get you out of pocket, man. Stay balanced and stay on your pivot. You know what I'm saying? Until next time, y'all.
Yeah. We signing off, man. Guys, stop being so bitch made. Don't be slaves to vagina, please. Please. You're killing us. But until next time, another Conscious Approach video in the books. We'll see you later. Peace.
Peace.